Every modern worker eventually reaches a quiet moment of rupture. It usually happens during an all-hands meeting or while reading a highly polished email from human resources. The voice on the stage or the text on the screen is using warm, sacred words: community, purpose, growth, wellness, impact. But inside your mind, a switch flips. Your brain rejects the text. You don't hear a message about wellness. You hear a strategic maneuver to decrease health insurance premiums. You don't see a corporate mission statement. You see an ideological mask designed to hide a quarterly drive for shareholder value. In that exact moment of cognitive dissonance, you have entered a distinct philosophical tradition. You have abandoned a naive, literal reading of your environment and adopted a posture of systemic doubt. In 1965, the French philosopher Paul Ricoeur coined a term for this specific intellectual tradition. He called it the hermeneutics of suspicion, a method of interpretation that treats the surface appearance of things as a deliberate deception designed to hide a deeper, darker truth. This video is a deep dive into that posture. We are going to look at what happens when suspicion becomes our permanent home, why the modern workplace forces us to become amateur sleuths of our own exploitation, and how Ricoeur's framework of post-critique offers us the only viable escape from a life of paralyzing corporate cynicism. Before we can look at Ricoeur's solution, we need to strip away the academic intimidation from this word, hermeneutics. What does it actually mean? The word hides a brilliant historical irony. For centuries, hermeneutics was used as a strictly religious discipline, the rigorous, holy science of analyzing and interpreting biblical texts. Early Christian theologians formalized it to unlock the absolute singular word of a monotheistic God. And yet, the word they used derives entirely from a polytheistic pagan myth. It is named after Hermes, the winged messenger god of ancient Greece. Hermes had a notoriously volatile job. The decrees of the Olympian gods were incomprehensible to human minds. Hermes couldn't just deliver a message verbatim. He had to decode it, translate it, and explain what it meant for mortals. But to the Greeks, Hermes wasn't just a postman. He was the god of translations, boundaries, wit, and thieves. He was a trickster. The Greeks understood that translation is an unstable human art form. To translate is to interpret, and to interpret is to introduce the possibility of bias, distortion, and human flair. When early biblical scholars adopted the Greek word hermeneunin, to interpret, they tried to execute a massive intellectual hijacking. They wanted to strip the word of its trickster energy. They tried to turn hermeneutics into a rigid, objective science to ensure that human interpreters didn't accidentally inject a Hermes-like error into the sacred script. The stakes were infinite. Misinterpret a message from Hermes, and you might get lost on the road. Misinterpret the Bible, and you might face eternal damnation. But by leaving the name of Hermes stamped on the discipline, they left a permanent back door open. They anchored the study of meaning to a trickster god. They acknowledged that interpretation is an inherently unstable, dangerous act. This brings us to the hermeneutic circle. Interpretation is never a passive mirror reflecting an image. It is a continuous loop between the text and the invisible personal lens of the reader. You never just read something cleanly. Every time you look at a data point, read a news article, or open a workplace email, your brain is actively performing hermeneutics. You are running that information through a lens made of your past experiences, your culture, and your fears, and you are manufacturing meaning. When Paul Ricoeur stepped onto the scene, he realized that humanity has two fundamentally opposing lenses available to decode reality. He called them the hermeneutics of faith and the hermeneutics of suspicion. To truly grasp the shift Ricoeur was analyzing, we have to look at these two lenses side by side. Before the modern era, the dominant way of interpreting the world was the hermeneutics of faith, or the hermeneutics of recollection. This traditional approach looked at the world, at sacred texts, and at human institutions with an attitude of fundamental trust. It assumed that meaning was real, that it was good, and that it was trying to reveal itself to us. The goal of interpretation was simply to listen deeply, to open yourself up and to receive the truth that the text was offering. It was a vow of obedience to the text. But Ricoeur argued that after the collapses of the 19th century, a completely inverse school of interpretation was born. The hermeneutics of suspicion does not listen, it interrogates. Suspicion starts from the absolute conviction that the surface text is a trap. It assumes that consciousness itself is untrustworthy and that we are constantly lying to ourselves, and that our institutions are built upon structural illusions. The practitioner of suspicion does not ask, "What does this statement mean?" They ask, "What interest is this statement serving? What is it hiding? What is the unstated power dynamic that requires this specific sentence to be uttered right now?" Meaning is no longer something to be gathered or celebrated. It is a symptom to be decoded. If the hermeneutics of faith is the act of listening to a song, the hermeneutics of suspicion is an autopsy of the composer. It approaches reality not with an open hand, but with a scalpel. Paul Ricoeur argued that Western consciousness was fundamentally reshaped by three great thinkers who operated as the ultimate genealogists of our illusions. He called them the masters of suspicion: Karl Marx, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Sigmund Freud. These three thinkers were in completely different fields, but they shared an identical diagnostic breakthrough. They looked at the grand, noble structures of human culture, religion, morality, art, and law, and declared them to be illusions. They introduced a rigorous methodology for stripping away what philosophers call false consciousness, the state of mind where we unknowingly participate in our own subjugation. The three masters of suspicion produced analyses in their respective fields that are all relevant to the analysis of experiences in modern workplaces. The implications of their work can be viewed as exposing the following. Karl Marx introduced a hermeneutics of economic demystification. He looked at corporate cultures, employment contracts, and narratives of industrial progress and declared them to be an ideology. To Marx, ideology is a beautiful mask worn by capital. The corporate structure tells you that your labor is a partnership, but Marx's suspicion reveals that this partnership is an illusion designed to keep you from realizing that the surplus value of your life is being systematically extracted to enrich a shareholder class. Friedrich Nietzsche took the scalpel to our psychological motivations and moral codes. Through his lens, corporate professionalism, compliance training, and the culture of the team player are a domesticated herd. Nietzsche argued that modern systems use language to turn weakness into a virtue. The organization rewards your humility, your compliance, and your willingness to work late, not because it loves you, but because it wants to break you of your individual will to power. It convinces you that sacrificing your life for the brand is a moral good, when in fact it is actually just organizational pacification. Sigmund Freud cracked open the internal architecture of the worker's mind. He looked at our obsession with career stability, our performance anxiety, and our desperate need for a manager's validation, and he traced it back to the nursery. Freud's suspicion suggests that the corporate ladder is simply a great, giant, sublimated theater for our unresolved childhood neuroses. The organization exploits your primal fear of abandonment and your deep-seated desire for the approval of a father figure, wrapping those unconscious vulnerabilities in the respectable clothing of a performance review. Indeed, this view finds contemporary validation in literature on why we tolerate toxic leaders. Ricoeur points out that these masters did not want to destroy meaning altogether. They wanted to clear away false meaning to arrive at a truer understanding. They were practicing the aestheticism of the intellect, a rigorous, painful stripping away of comforting lies. In the modern workplace, practicing the hermeneutics of suspicion isn't just an academic exercise, it is a mandatory survival mechanism. Modern corporate culture has mastered the art of ideological camouflage. Because it operates on accelerated loops without an ultimate human purpose, it requires your total psychological compliance. But because it can no longer command that compliance through brute physical force, it uses language. It deliberately deploys the vocabulary of the hermeneutics of faith, asking you to trust the process and believe in company family to keep you compliant. And so, the worker is forced to let loose the ancient trickster Hermes, applying the lessons of the masters of suspicion just to navigate their day without being gaslit. When management says, "We have a flat hierarchy here," the Marx in your brain translates it to, "The lines of authority are invisible, so you cannot hold anyone accountable for systemic decisions." When HR introduces a mindfulness and meditation app, the Freud in your brain translates it to, "They are privatizing stress, turning a structural issue of overwork into a psychological defect of your personal coping mechanisms." When a project manager asks you to lean into this growth opportunity, the Nietzsche in your brain translates it to, "They want me to absorb the labor of 2 employees without an increase in compensation." You become a forensic reader of your own environment. You scan every email for what is left unsaid. If you take a corporate wellness seminar at face value, you will blame yourself for your burnout instead of looking at the impossible volume of your workload. Suspicion becomes your armor. You pride yourself on this. You feel clever. You feel like you are the one who sees through the matrix. But Paul Ricoeur cautions us that this victory is a trap. Suspicion is an incredible tool for liberation, but it is a catastrophic place to live. When you spend all your time stripping the masks off of everything around you, the scalpel eventually slips. You don't just unmask the company, you unmask yourself. To understand why Ricoeur sought a way out of suspicion, we have to look at what happened when the generation of thinkers after Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud got a hold of this scalpel prior to Ricoeur's concept of the hermeneutics of suspicion. In the 20th century, the architects of critical theory, most notably the Frankfurt School, took dialectical analysis and a suspicious mindset and applied it to every single square inch of modern existence. They looked at music, cinema, art, hobbies, and family dynamics, and they unmasked all of it as the culture industry, a massive, inescapable, totalizing apparatus designed to brainwash individuals, manufacture consent, and ensure capitalist extraction. Ricoeur deeply respected this work. He knew that critique was vital for breaking false consciousness, but he also identified a fatal, catastrophic trap embedded within the critical theory project. Critique is infinitely brilliant at demolishing, but it possesses zero capacity to rebuild. When critique becomes totalizing, it becomes a jail. If you believe that every piece of art, every spiritual impulse, every creative endeavor, and every human gesture is always already corrupted, compromised, and co-opted by power and capital, then nothing pure can ever exist. The critical intellectual becomes trapped in a dogmatic religion of their own making, where the only righteous act left is to endlessly point out how problematic, corrupted, or extracted everything is. You become highly educated, completely ungaslit, and totally paralyzed. You have built an absolute expertise in diagnosing the cage, but you have completely lost the ability to imagine what freedom looks like. When you bring the totalizing effect of critical theory down to the level of the individual corporate desk, you get what Ricoeur famously called the desert of criticism. If you let suspicion become your permanent cognitive baseline, your world transforms into an existential wasteland. You look at your colleagues laughing over coffee, and through your hypercritical lens, you reduce their interaction to corporate coping mechanisms or networking strategies. You lose the capacity for authentic workplace solidarity. You look at a project that could genuinely help a client, and you dismiss it as mere asset churning for a faceless entity. Your own creative labor becomes an act of psychological self-harm because you've convinced yourself that all labor within the system is entirely poisoned. This breeds the ultimate modern pathology, the irony trap. To protect yourself from being duped by the corporate machine, you coat yourself in layers of protective sarcasm, cynicism, and detachment. You quiet quit. You make bitter jokes at the water cooler. You tell yourself that because you see the matrix, you are above it. But notice what has happened. The machine has still won. By locking you in a desert of criticism, it has stripped you of your capacity to care about anything within your waking hours. You have traded your vulnerability for safety, but the price of that safety is complete deadening of your inner life. You have mastered the art of unmasking, but now you are standing in a room full of ghosts. This is why Paul Ricoeur forged a path beyond critical theory. He called this destination Postcritique, literally the intellectual space we occupy after we are finished critiquing. Ricoeur argued that human consciousness must pass through 3 distinct stages to reach maturity. The first stage is called the First Naiveté. This is the state of immediate childlike belief. In your career, this was you on the very first day of your first job, believing the orientation videos, trusting that the company cared about your soul, and genuinely investing your identity into the corporate brand. It is an innocent, uncritical acceptance of the surface text. Then comes the second stage, the desert of criticism. The illusions are shattered by the masters of suspicion. You see the extraction, the politics, the systemic loops. Ricoeur says this stage is absolutely necessary. You cannot skip it. You must break the false idols. Clearing away the debris of false consciousness is a prerequisite for freedom. But Ricoeur insists that this desert is not the final destination. The ultimate goal of human consciousness is to cross the desert and arrive at the third stage, the Second Naiveté. The Second Naiveté is not a retreat back to the ignorance of childhood. You don't forget the lessons of Marx, Nietzsche, or Freud. You don't suddenly start believing the HR slogans again. You don't forget that the corporate structure is an extraction engine. Instead, the second naivete is the conscious decision to move through suspicion and choose to believe in the possibility of meaning anyway. It is an advanced post-critical capacity to say, yes, this environment is historically compromised. Yes, it has elements of power and capital embedded within it. But I choose to look through the cracks to find what is still sacred, beautiful, or true within it anyway. It is the realization that while the corporate structure may be an unfeeling machine, the human beings trapped inside it, including yourself, are still real. What does Ricoeur's second naivete look like on a Tuesday in a modern corporate office? How do you practice post-critique when you are surrounded by metrics and performance reviews? It begins with radical realism. You accept, once and for all, that the organization is an extraction engine. You stop wasting your energy being shocked, outraged, or deeply offended when it acts like one. You stop trying to unmask it because it has already been unmasked. You have graduated from critique. Once you stop looking to the corporate machine for your ultimate validation, you free up your psychological capital to practice a hermeneutics of restoration. You look at your daily life through a new lens. You reclaim the qualitative craft of your labor. Even if your final output is sucked into a corporate void, you choose to take pride in the elegance of your code, the clarity of your writing, or the precision of your design, not for the company's KPIs, but as a sovereign act of personal dignity. You cultivate authentic solidarity. You look past the corporate professional masks of your colleagues and recognize their shared existential situation. You stop seeing them through the cynical lens of critical theory as mere cogs or competitors, and start seeing them as companions in a loop. You offer real, unoptimized kindness that cannot be tracked on a spreadsheet. You build an uncolonized inner life. You understand that your job is a bounded transaction. You give it your specialized time, but you guard your deep human duration with your life. The masters of suspicion and the architects of critical theory are excellent at telling us what to run away from. They show us the cage, the illusions, and the loops. But if we listen only to them, we spend our entire lives in a state of reactive paranoia, always looking over our shoulder, always hypervigilant, always cynical. Paul Ricoeur's Postcritique demands a higher form of courage. It asks us to look at a world stripped of ready-made meaning and dare to create our own. The corporate machine wants you to live in a state of permanent frustration, either naively chasing its miraged finish lines or sourly detached in the corner of the office. Postcritique is the ultimate act of workplace rebellion because it sidesteps both options. It is the realization that your life does not need to wait for a structural finish line to find its justification. The finish line is not at the end of the quarter, it is not at the top of the ladder, and it is not in your retirement portfolio. The finish line is found every time you pull your consciousness out of the corporate clock and ground yourself in the absolute, non-negotiable reality of the present moment. It is found when you choose to care, choose to create, and choose to trust, fully aware of the machine around you, but completely unbound by its design.